And welcome back to Janky AF. Now, I believe it was the famous American poet Marshall Mathers who once said, "Guess who's back? Back again. My Buick's back. Tell a friend." And welcome back to Janky AF. Well, look what we have here. Seems my Buick has been painted brown. This just went through a 30-mile tow. But we're at our space here. We finally got pretty much all the vehicles together, and better on a tow truck getting muddy on the top than, driving it and getting muddy on the bottom. So we think it's done, or, in good running order, which is very, very exciting. And we're going to try to move it into this garage. That'll be an adventure. But it's getting dark here, so we're going to try to move it inside. But I'll go over exactly what we had done. It's, spoiler alert, it was much better than we thought in terms of the work that it needed. I have a very reputable shop that I trust now, and I think they're straight shooters, so that's half the battle right there. So we're going to try to get her in the garage and in for the night. Thank you.
Go and bust a groove. If you got diarrhea, stop. Don't you try to move. Stay on the toilet. Stay on the toilet now.
And welcome back to Janky AF. Well, it was just about a year ago that, or at least the Buick is back. It's done very well and a lot of engagement. I've been very surprised how much people just love this Buick, although it shouldn't be surprising because I do love it myself. Although sometimes I feel like I have somewhat oddball taste. So, hopefully you've seen some of the other videos, the Trouble in Buick Paradise videos, where we go over sort of the work we've done to this car. So we did a new overhead. We did a new upper intake. We thought it had a coolant leak. And then at the end of the video, to sort of cut to the chase, we had some smoking going on in the engine bay, which we misdiagnosed as an exhaust leak of some kind. It seemed like there was smoke coming out of the O2 sensor, and really flummoxed and frustrating because we were trying to do the work ourselves, get everything right, and hopefully get the Buick driving back again. And although it did drive, and we did find some coolant in the upper intake, which suggests that it was in there, I decided to take it to a professional, someone who does this full time, to get it worked on. And very luckily, although $900 some later, it was actually less than I thought it was going to be, because they diagnosed it as just a valve cover gasket. Now, if you look in the video, I actually say like, oh, maybe we should do a valve cover gasket. Is that oil coming out from the, well, just that's
probably seeping out of there, yeah.
Yeah. I'm not saying we need to do it now, but you think at some point we should do a valve cover gasket?
It's not a bad idea.
And we ended up not doing that. We sort of just ran out of time. We thought we had the major thing under control, but it was just oil dripping out of the valve cover gasket that was heating up on the exhaust and the various pieces of metal in the car and smoking. So they detected no coolant leaks, which is great. And the other thing I was really worried about was the brake lines. Now, at the end of this video, we'll go over like a full, detail by detail synopsis of what exactly was wrong with it and what exactly was done. There was a couple little items. The battery tray was getting kind of rusty. This is one of those cars that it's in very, very good condition overall, but there's just a lot of little things going on. Perhaps you can see in the video the headliner's completely tore out now, and one of those things where it has to get worse before it gets better. Someone recently just commented on one of my videos, nice car, but you ruined it with the wheels, and I replied, somewhat glibly or in jest, yes, thank you. We ruin all of our cars here at Janky AF. So, by that I just mean that, I want to make them in my own vision. Will I sell them later? I'd love not to. I'd love just to have Jay Leno's garage and never sell any of my vehicles. But of course, the hoarder in me and the, ADD person in me always wants new vehicles. So we are working with very, very limited resources here at Janky AF. And that's sort of the pride of like sort of the Janky ethos of just trying to get by with what you have, do more with less, and still have like a lovely fleet of classic cars. I think anyone who's not in strict poverty should be able to live the classic car lifestyle. And maybe even if you are, if you care about it that much, live out of your car. And I'm certainly not glorifying any poverty or anything like that. But the overarching point of Janky AF is, as our turn signal, one of the other things that's going wrong is the turn signal won't turn off on one end. I have watched a video on how to fix that. It's a little bit involved. You got to pull the steering wheel off. But the point is that, you can do a lot with a little. That's sort of the spirit of Janky AF. So, you may have seen in the last video too, the car got towed after the work was done. It was just caked in mud. Now I prefer that to driving it on the salted roads. And then a couple weeks later, I finally pulled the Buick out. The weather was turning nice. It's late March here. And I said, you know what, I'm just gonna drive the Buick for a few days. I've been dying to drive it for, a year basically. And the next day we get, 14-degree weather and snow. So, now we have mud back on the car after driving it in a nice rainstorm and getting a free car wash. But it's back, it's driving, it feels great. I forgot how nice it was to drive this car, the wonderful ride. Now for a luxury car, you're sitting extremely low. And so you get this low, wide stance that almost like feels, I dare say, like, some sort of supercar or something like that. Part of the reason it may be riding so low is because it does seem like it's sagging quite a bit in the back. I have been told at one point that it's probably going to need rear struts eventually, and that time may well come soon because it does look like it's sagging a little bit in the back. The mud getting caked on, and I've just been neglecting it, been so busy with other things. Now the moisture sits there, it sets up, and you have a few more rust spots than it had. Overall, very, very clean, but I'm noticing a couple little more rust spots here and there, just minor little things. Hopefully we can get some paint correction eventually. But I just want to take you for a little ride and give you an update on the Buick. This is taking us up into the present moment. And we're going to take it to my famous $2 2-minute car wash, favorite car wash around. So we'll spray her down. We'll get her looking, as sharp as we can. And at least it's gotten, this 6-month-old mud off of it. And then of course we'll drive it up to the barn where it's being stored. Finally have my own barn now. And in the process of that, we'll get it completely muddy again. But hopefully we can give it like a nice little sponge bath, wipe down, like the geriatric that it is, and at least get a little bit more cleaned up. So that's a brief tour, brief update on my 1995 Buick LeSabre. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll have much more coming soon. So, Janky do Thanky.
If you're feeling funky, go and bust a groove. If you got diarrhea, stop. Don't you try to move, stay on the toilet. Stay on the toilet now.
And welcome back to Janky AF. Okay, so as promised, we're going to give you a full rundown of everything that was done to my Buick. Now, obviously, if you've watched the other episodes of Trouble in Buick Paradise, you've seen the slog that we've gone through and trying to make this Buick correct. In addition, there was a lot of work done to it before then. So much for a $1,000 Buick, but here we go. Okay, so the parts: power steering pressure hose, engine oil pan gasket, valve cover gasket, a battery with a 3-year warranty, a nice die-hard, and power steering fluid, and then we have miscellaneous fluids, seals, and sprays. And that parts list will give you a little indication of what was actually done. So the big thing was the valve cover gasket. That was where the smoke was coming from, and it was just dripping down and heating up and smoking. So it was not, any sort of O2 sensor or plastic, as we may have surmised if you go back and watch part 3 of Trouble in Buick Paradise. In addition to that, we also had a New York State safety inspection, so ring up $10 for that. And because when we first did the upper intake manifold. We put in sort of like some low-grade engine oil just in case there was any coolant still in there. You would sort of run that through it and then change the oil again. So I had him do another oil change. That way we got fresh oil in there. Diagnosed oil leak, removed and replaced valve cover gaskets. Very, very good. That was only $164 in labor. So actually the real thing we were troubleshooting wasn't really that bad at all. In addition to that, they diagnosed, removed, and replaced power steering pressure hose, which was leaking apparently, and topped off fluid and bled the system. You know, I'm the type of fella that, you know, while you're in there, I really want to make this Buick absolutely bulletproof. And I know no car can ever be bulletproof, but I put like an aluminum radiator in because the plastic one had a little crack in it. And I said, if we're going to upgrade it, we might as well go all the way. So I'm really trying to make this thing, you know, reliable. In addition to that, I noticed for a while that it was leaking a little bit of oil. It seemed to have gotten worse, and so I said, is there anything you can do about that? And so they removed and replaced the engine oil pan gasket. So it's not like I need to put a whole new pan in there, but just replace the gasket on it. So we went ahead and did that, and then removed battery and cleaned up battery tray. Installed new battery. Tray was rusty, but did not need to be replaced. So you know, where the battery was sitting, you know, the terminals had gotten a little janky, and the tray it was sitting on was a little rusty. There is some surface rust in the engine bay. You know, it's just a car from the 90s, so that's normal. And they decided it wasn't worth, you know, totally replacing. Now in the spring, when we get this car out again, we're going to sort of remove the battery. Well, the battery's already unhooked. We're going to take it out and clean up that tray again, and just see what we can kind of do to clean under the engine bay to try to make it as nice as possible for what it is. But it's, you know, it's reliable now. It drove great. And the total for this invoice was, let's see, $945.96. That's $475 in labor and $401 in parts. Now, any shop will mark up parts. That's just what they do. If you're smart, and here's a little tip, you know, if you're just doing brakes or something, go buy the pads and rotors yourself. If you're getting an oil change, go buy the oil and the filter yourself. You'll save a little bit of money, and that way you can have the fun experience of buying the parts yourself, picking out which ones you want, and all that fun stuff. So, you know, another $945 into the $1,000 Buick, but it was driving great. And of course, you know, before we end here, of course, now there's something else wrong with it, which is that it sort of wasn't starting one day. My lovely sweetheart was driving the Buick because her car was in the shop, and it has been a reliable secondary vehicle for us in the family. And it stopped starting on her. It wouldn't want to start. It was kind of intermittent. Sometimes he'd start it, sometimes it wouldn't want to go. I thought maybe it was the starter, you know, the old bang on the starter trick. That wasn't working, so I got it hauled off to a shop. And as soon as it arrived on the flatbed truck, and I do have a free 24/7 roadside towing, thank you to Haggerty, who, if you want to sponsor Janky AF, we're more than happy to bring you on board. Big fan of Haggerty. Perhaps I should not advertise because that gives them no incentive to give me money for advertising that I'm already doing, but, you know, I just like the service. As soon as it got off the flatbed truck, mechanic started, and it started right up. So, you know, something was jostling and jiggling in there. He asked me, now, have you tried to start it in neutral? And I said, I never thought of that, no. So the car came back, worked again, and then stopped working again. And then sure enough, I would start, you know, you turn the accessory on, you put the car into neutral, and you start it, and it starts right up. So that could be as bad, you know, a quick internet search, that could be as bad as something wrong with the transmission. It could be as good as a neutral safety switch. So we're hoping it's just a neutral safety switch, which it's a very isolated problem, and it would seem to be, you know, if there's such a thing as a neutral safety switch that's prohibiting it from starting in park, that's what's going on. So hopefully we'll get into that in the spring, hopefully maybe fix it ourselves. And, but, you know, trouble in Buick paradise once again. But I hope you enjoyed this video. I love my 95 LeSabre. I get lots of comments on it. People really like it because it's a car that you just don't see around that often. And, you know, they were really, really good cars. I believe when they were being sold new, you know, they were the top selling car in their class. So they made a lot of them. You can still find them really cheap online. You should probably get one that was better than mine, but of course I always buy the janky one because like most YouTubers, there's some sort of perverse thrill of buying a car that's in disrepair. So there you have it. Thanks so much for watching. Another episode involving our 1995 Buick LeSabre, and we'll have more on it very soon. And until then, Janky do Thanky.
One small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.